The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Schoology. Every day, millions of students, parents, faculty, and administrators from more than 1,600 school districts leverage Schoology to advance what is possible in education. The team at Schoology is passionate about making its users successful, and they know sometimes you might need a little help to achieve your desired outcomes. To help districts find their way to success, Schoology has created Schoology Compass, a set of self-service resources and tools to support school and district leaders in their journey to success. Compass is made up of 5 district success routes. Each one is designed to advance what is possible at your district. To learn more about Schoology Compass, simply visit Schoology.com.
Well, no, especially considering I honestly think that a ladder is how I'm going to die. Welcome to OnEducation. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We're going to discuss Google's acquisition of Workbench, why crowdfunding is making up the shortfall on school budgets, the reasons why the first year of teaching is so difficult, our top 10 formative assessment apps, and our guest this week is Monica Burns.
Awesome is right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
Cool. Hey, my Christmas tree went up today. Is yours up?
I just was working on that yesterday. The whole day yesterday was about Christmas trees, lights, and everything else related to the holidays being put up in the house.
We have to put the lights up outside a little bit earlier because it snows quite a bit earlier here.
Oh yeah.
In Barrie in particular, there's already a 1.5 foot of snow in my front yard.
Jeez.
So, oh yeah. No, dude, in Barrie where I live, we get what's called lake effect snow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Quite a bit. And it basically starts snowing right around the second week of November, and the snow doesn't go away until March.
Man.
So we have to put the lights up pretty quick.
Yes.
So that on like the house lights. So because it's crazy to put them up when it's like slippery and snowy. And,
that'd be a bit dangerous. Huh?
Well, no, especially considering I honestly think that a ladder is how I'm going to die.
That's your worst.
I really
nightmare.
do.
You've told me that before. Yeah.
Have I really?
Yeah, you've told. Well, you said you hate ladders. You hate.
I hate ladders.
The heights and stuff. Yes.
I'm absolutely convinced that that's how I'm going to go. So, and actually I was away when they did it. I was somewhere on a trip or something a couple weeks ago when they Cheryl did it with I believe probably my in-laws helped out, and they put the lights up because my yard is just covered in snow now. So, but the tree went up today.
Very nice.
It's fun. It's funny because we have a little one, right? Like he's 2.5.
Yeah.
So he wanted to help. And so what happens is the front bottom of the tree is
loaded
with ornaments. I'm going to take a picture of it. Actually, maybe we'll use it for like the podcast, like the picture we put out when we tweet. Because the front of the tree is loaded with ornaments, and then it's like evenly distributed everywhere else. But you can tell where Jacob just went to town.
Yes, that's super cool. I like
on
that.
The tree. We're gonna leave it.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, I like when our kids get involved in that, and then they add to the decorations themselves too. So that's good.
Totally. So weigh in on this Christmas tree going up. What's your date? Like when do you do it? Do you have a specific day? What time is too early? That kind of stuff. What say you?
We don't have a specific day. I would say those people that do it before Thanksgiving, the United States Thanksgiving, that seems a little bit early to me. But that's just me. December, anytime in December, I would say is a great time.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm like adamant that anytime after December 1st is fine. You can literally put it up December 1st. I'm cool with that. But I mean, anytime before that just seems nuts to me.
Yeah. Seems wild.
And I know there's always
excited.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not, but I get people who are. My mom is one of those people that starts counting down to Christmas in like September or whatever. Hi, Mom. So I know that some people are excited. Generally, I see conversations every once in a while about making sure not to put it up until after Veterans Day or whatever, Remembrance Day, out of respect. I mean, I don't know if it's a sign of disrespect that you put your Christmas tree up before Veterans Day.
I don't know how they're related. Yes, exactly.
Right.
But I get you. Yes.
But you see it all over the internet. So, I mean, it must be something that someone thinks.
Yeah.
But yeah, December 1st is fine. So what's today? Today's December 2nd, recording on December 2nd.
We're doing great.
Perfect timing. Tree looks great. Lots of ornaments front center, just I suppose where they belong, and we're good to go. All the other random stuff is out that just ends up in my way when I'm trying to like make my breakfast or something like that. Anyways, Google acquires, let's move on to, other stuff now. Google acquires Workbench. I had actually never heard of Workbench, but now that I'm looking at it, it should have been something I'd heard about, similar to my thoughts on things like Pear Deck that I didn't even know existed until September. Tell us about what is Workbench and why do you think this is important?
Well, they said, within the article that we'll go ahead and share, that Workbench and Google Classroom were already basically integrated together. So it's not a big surprise that they acquired them. But it is an interesting take on kind of like I was describing it to you off air, a combination of code.org and kind of a project-based learning, lesson plan, units, planning type of website. And so there's these activities that you have your students do. They seem really in a wide variety of content areas and for a wide variety of grades, and they seem really, really in depth. Sometimes these sites kind of provide these lesson plans that are just so generic. Pearson would be a good example of that. But I got to take my shot at them. But this is super detailed, very well done. They list their standards. And then there's a component of coding that's associated with it, with each one of the different activities. So it's a really interesting take on project-based learning and / working with coding. So yeah. It says it's not a big surprise that Google ended up acquiring them.
They didn't say for how much.
It didn't say that.
That's fine. I'd be interested in knowing that number, but raised $3 million in funding. So, and good. I mean, when you look at their partner list down at the bottom, I mean, Makey, Sphero, Little Bits, Microbit, those are all
big time companies,
pretty big names.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Parrot is what? That's the drone company, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So, I mean, big partners. None of the people that I work with are on there, unfortunately. But maybe that's I have the power to change things now.
Hey,
interestingly
never
enough,
know.
So
you'll check into it and see what you get.
I'm looking at this now because I think it's super interesting. It looks like a neat platform,
and it's free too for teachers that want to go look into it. That Workbench platform is free. You sign up with a Google account, boom, you have access to all the lessons. So it's very interesting.
Awesome. Big deal. I'm sure if $3 million is all they ever raised, I can guarantee you the people who are getting out based on that are probably making a decent amount of coin if Google is buying them, because there's no doubt it's selling for quite a bit more than that, I'm sure.
Yes.
This one's interesting, this topic of crowdfunding, especially to make up, shortfalls or things that teachers need or whatever. Obviously, we're going to see a lot more of this sort of thing in the future, and we're kind of partnered up, or we've worked with Pledge Sense before.
Yes,
with the teachers are professionals in a couple different ways. Not only having Andy and Alice Keeler on the pod, but through my work with Steve Isaacs on the Classcraft assignment.
Exactly.
So we've been involved with Pledge Sense a couple different ways. But what did you think of this article?
Well, I mean, it's amazing that people are such hustlers, which it doesn't surprise me, actually, that educators are such hustlers. That's what I mean by people. But it's sad in a way that energy to hustle to be able to go ahead and get your projects crowdfunded. The energy is not being directed at kind of some creative things, within your classrooms, you know what I mean? Or more energy towards things that you can that have direct results with your students. Instead, it's like having to bring in more money because our school budgets are so limited. So
right.
it's a great positive, but it's also a negative because our school budgets are limited so much, in fact, that you have to crowdfund in order to make up the shortfalls.
It's amazing. The article talks a little bit about inequality and how like one school on one side of a city, has a budget of like $25,000. And a school on the other side of the city has a budget of $2,000.
Yes,
and
sick.
So crowdfunding is a way for some of these teachers to make up the inequality at least a little bit. But I mean, if a school is in an area and the teacher only has a budget of $2,000, then I feel like it's logical to deduce that the crowdfunding potential is a little bit less as well.
Yes.
Potentially. If you're in a low wealth neighborhood, then you're going to have a hard time raising funds when people are having a hard time just putting food on their own tables.
Yes. So I guess social media then has such a huge impact then, to make sure that you can put your things out there and say, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's my plan. I'm organized. I have a mission. Help us out, with a few dollars here. And a lot of teachers are doing that. They're hustling and they're working hard at making sure that these things get funded.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is where things like having a PLN, having a network of people that on Twitter that you can get help from on Twitter or whatever to reach out and let people know that you're trying to raise money for something. That makes a huge difference.
Big time.
So, so we are going to see tons more of this for sure. It seems to be working for some people. It's probably related to how much effort you put into it, and how cool your project is. I'll tell you, if you have a cool project and you can even with us talk to us about the outcomes and what you're looking to do,
for sure,
there's a good chance that I'd be even interested in supporting it. And we actually did that just this week, didn't we?
Yeah. No, I mean, we would be more than happy to go ahead and advertise for you and retweet things that you guys are working on, or we'll put them on the podcast and maybe you'll be able to reach that specific goal, whatever you're going for.
100%. This, I kind of just came across this one teacher who was crowdfunding for a small little language project. She only needed a couple $100. So we, as the podcast, we pitched in 25. And we'd love to see the results of that. But there's tons of these little projects, and the guys at Classcraft, we talked about that. If you listen to our episode with those folks just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the exact same thing about wanting to actually have a meaningful, real impact on what's actually happening in an actual classroom. It does make a difference, and it's real money going to a real thing, and that's really special. So yeah, if you have a really cool idea, please let us know about it. Just tweet at us and share it with us so that we can share it out. And we'd be happy to use our social networking. I mean, it's not huge. We don't have 150,000 followers like Miss Keeler or anything like that, but not yet. Not yet.
We're working on it.
Right. But we'll help if we can. And we may even pitch in some money. You guys listen, if you guys keep downloading and sharing, we keep getting sponsors that gives us money, and that doesn't just go towards, buying video games, even though it might. No, it helps us do this stuff.
Yes, the good work.
I wouldn't be able to put in $25 towards that job, that project, if we didn't have it because of our sponsors. So we wanted to make a difference, and hopefully that does. this is a really interesting topic. This last one that we're
Yes.
going to talk about, actually second last one, I guess this is a fun, jam-packed episode of OnEducation,
There's
folks.
tons of stuff we're talking
You're
about.
getting
Great
value
stuff.
for your time, your commuting time today. This is an article about why teachers leave the profession, I guess. And I guess my first thought on this, and you can talk a lot more to this than I can, so I'm going to let you talk. I just want to say that I feel like this is something that happens a lot more in the US than it does in Canada. In fact, I don't really know, other than occasional teachers, these are like supply list teachers. You know what I'm talking about, like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, like
okay, so
long-term sub, kind of that type of thing.
Right.
Yes.
Other than people who are like wallowing on supply lists because they haven't gotten. Remember, I've explained this a couple times. Our process to get like a full-time contract is extensive and ridiculous and pretty stupid. So other than people who end up sitting on like a supply list for 5 or 6 years and just are like, damn, I got to get on with my life. I got to go do something else.
Yes.
Other than that, like once you're in a full-time contract as a teacher in Canada, generally speaking, people don't leave. So I think that this is, and I think that this has a lot to do with salary. And when we're looking at these, you posted some charts in our notes, and I think I'm generally right. Am I not?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is the statistics that we have in front of us is basically why would teachers leave their job?
Right.
The number one thing is salary.
Right.
After that, it actually is really interesting. I mean, we have things like school climate, and then of course, like leadership, super important as far as why people would leave their jobs. Now, why would people remain in their positions? Very similar again, too. We have salary and school climate. And I thought it was interesting too, Mike, that a level of autonomy is important on both, whether or not you remain or you're going to leave. If you don't feel like you're able to go ahead and do some things, creatively as a teacher, that everything is kind of like, I want to just say, like, you're just having to do the exact same thing as everybody else. It's a tough gig, I think. So that would be another reason why you might end up leaving. But salary, super important.
Leadership, trust,
yes,
level of autonomy, huge things. Grade or subject reassignment was one that was a little bit higher up on.
Yeah, if you ended up like, if you were teaching something, and it happens a lot in the United States where you were teaching a content area and then you're on the bottom of the totem pole as far as tenure, you might be asked to teach outside of your content area. You know what I mean? And so that would be enough to put, that looks like that's one of the things of why you might not want to stay, as far as in the profession.
That one specifically happens a decent amount in Canada, where it in particular, it actually happens to women quite a bit who go on maternity leave.
Oh no.
Because under the collective bargaining contract, as far as I know, the board has to give you your teaching job back. Obviously, you can't lose your job because you got pregnant, you had a child and went on maternity leave, but they are not obligated to put you in the same grade as you taught before.
Oh no.
So I've actually seen this at where I was teaching, where women would come back from maternity leave and be teaching a completely different subject. Now, that being said, it would not necessarily be enough for them to leave, and that's because as we notice in these charts, that some of the reasons why people stay in teaching is because of salary. Well, I mean, this is definitely the reason why Canadian teachers don't leave. Teaching is one of the best jobs you can have in Canada.
That's awesome.
As far as, the combination of salary and job security is concerned.
Yeah.
And, for better or for worse, you'll put up with a lot of crap if, you're able to live a comfortable life outside of your job. You may not be the most effective teacher in the world, and you may not, enjoy it as much as you should if you're putting up with a lot of nonsense, but the salary will keep you there.
It could.
And
It could. Yeah. I mean, I think though. I mean, of course, I would think like number one would be just job satisfaction. You know, you're have a passion for it. You're doing what you love, and then you actually get good pay, like you were just describing. Then you're going to put up with a lot of the other types of things because you're like, well, it doesn't matter what type of job. There's going to be that nonsense. You know what I mean? Every job has its nonsense. Exactly.
Right. Right. For sure. So, I mean, teaching is hard, man.
Yeah, it is. That's our good transition, though, too.
Teaching is hard, right? And I mean, that's why people leave. And so we saw this tweet. I saw it too, and you put it in the notes, and I'm glad you did because I'll tell you, I have nightmares about my first year of teaching. This Jonathan Pullum.
Yep.
Tweeted, and it got around and he wrote, I guess I'll quote it.
Yeah.
Said, moment of vulnerability. Teaching is hard. Being a first year teacher is hard. Asking for and receiving help is really difficult for me. Teacher exhaustion is real.
Yes.
And it's been hitting, and it is real, and it's been hitting pretty hard lately, is what he said, basically.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. My first year of teaching was brutal. Brutal. I remember it. It wasn't so far away, to be honest. So I remember it pretty clearly. And I was at the school at probably 6:30 or 7 in the morning and leaving at 6 or 6:30 at night. And I was getting into a lot of arguments with my boss because I wasn't afraid to tell him that he was wrong and that we needed to do things in a certain way. And I was trying to do the job as best as I could while learning and taking it all in. And working at a private school has its own sorts of challenges that are a little bit different.
Sure.
So I remember it, and it was a grind, man. So I get this. I get this completely.
Yeah. No, I gotcha.
How was your first year of teaching? Do you remember? You've been teaching for a lot longer than I have. How was it?
Do you remember it? Yep, 98, 99 was my first year of teaching. So 20 years ago, basically. And I taught in a little town 14 miles from the Mexican border. It's called Holtville, and it's in southeastern California. I want to shout out to it's called the Imperial Valley, and it's a big desert down in southeastern California.
Nice.
And I went specifically to this town because my wife was already teaching there. And so I ended up taking whatever was given to me. You know how that is, Mike? Whatever job was open. So,
sure.
So I actually taught, I'm a Spanish teacher by trade, but I taught English language learners in world history. I taught geography.
That's fun.
I taught introduction to keyboarding and computers.
Yeah, you did.
Isn't that weird? And then my last thing I taught in this, it was kind of a rotating freshman class. And I taught geography. So it's just really strange things, but I don't remember being sad or frustrated about that. I was just happy I had a job, kind of one of those things where you're like, cool, I'm teaching. And then I was also coaching every season. So in the fall, I was coaching cross country, and I coached basketball in the winter. And then in the spring, I was a head track coach. So it was busy.
You enjoyed your first year.
Yeah, no, it was just a blur, kind of a blur, But one of the things that I do remember, especially about this first year, is that kids could see the passion in you. And that's what really got me going as far as I knew that teaching was where I needed to be. They could see your passion, and then they kind of followed along. You know what I mean? Even though you might not even have taught that specific content area, but they could see your passion for teaching. And then they were able to go ahead and rise up also. And then they were super appreciative of you going and being willing to go ahead and teach and being there and all these types of things. So really, really positive experience for me, but super difficult. I also responded to Jonathan and told him, hey, everybody's first years, it's not just year, but first years are difficult because there's so much to learn. And there's a lot of frustrations that you didn't take into consideration that that are real as far as in the teaching profession, and majority of them have nothing to do with students or teaching.
It's the right hard work, though, right?
Yes.
I know we reference it all the time in a lot of different ways, but now we're talking about us and adults, and we need to. It's not just about finding the right hard work for our kids. It's, as a person, finding the right hard work for you.
Yes.
I actually wrote a whole paper about why I left my job to teach and how I relate that to games-based learning and video games and education. And I compared my guild leading in World of Warcraft to being the right hard work to make up for the fact that I hated my job when I was in sales. And that's why I left. I identified that I wasn't doing what I love to do, and that education was what I was meant to do. So, Jonathan, buddy, hang in there. We'll give you another shout out when we release the podcast. So
Absolutely.
Listen to us talk about you. But we're it's hard for everybody, man. It's hard for everybody. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, it wouldn't be worth it.
Yes.
Because everything in life that's hard is the things that, that you find you get the most value out of.
Absolutely.
And, if it wasn't hard, it wouldn't be worth it. So stick in there. It's a grind. Who would say that? Randall Sampson would tell you it's a grind.
It's a grind. He has the little bracelets.
Right.
Yes.
So grind on, buddy. You'll get there. It's supposed to be hard, and that's how you know you're doing a good job, because you care. So keep it up. You posted a screenshot of Andy.
Yes. Yes.
A great picture of Andy Leiser.
Yes, Andy Leiser.
Asking about real-time student response.
Yeah.
Web-based resources for real-time. My first thought was Pear Deck. Is that what I'm thinking? Is that what he's thinking?
It could be Pear Deck.
BYOD. Think from BYOD student device to projected image on the board, manipulation at board, a bonus. Nearpod, Pear Deck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then people just started including all of the things that we're going to transition to as far as formative assessment type of apps. So they were just basically now throwing out all of these different tools, which I thought was awesome.
Cool.
Not just sticking with what he was talking about, but we, like you just said, Pear Deck, Nearpod, fantastic tools. If you don't use them already, you should check them out. Even the free versions are amazing. I really liked that everybody got involved in this and really started saying, hey, here's some different tools that we're using right now and that we're successful with in our specific classrooms.
Cool. So when we come back, we're going to actually take a deep dive into this a little bit. We're going to talk about some of our favorite formative assessment apps, and hopefully there's something that you've never tried before that you'll love. So stay tuned.
OnEducation is brought to you by Classcraft. Classcraft is an amazing teaching resource created by teachers. Classcraft is dedicated to making school relevant and engaging to all of our students. Classcraft is proud to announce their Questathon quests created with shared storylines and custom illustrations to bring any subject to life. Every time a teacher downloads one of the free quests, Classcraft will add $1 to the Teachers Are Professionals Fund, which will be used to fund teacher requests to pledgesense.com. To learn more about Classcraft, simply go to classcraft.com.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. We are going to have a quick chat about formative assessment apps. There's so many, Glenn. There are so many apps.
Tons and tons of apps.
Programs.
Yeah, and that's
web-based.
That's got to be overwhelming for some teachers, though, too, that aren't in our space. We get excited. I think we're kind of that type of personality where we get excited about new tools, and learning about new things, and it's okay that there's hundreds of them, but it can be overwhelming for just a regular everyday teacher to keep track of what is the difference between this and what is actually good for me to use in these specific situations.
This would be overwhelming for the new teacher who, is looking at a giant list of things and not necessarily having the experience to know which ones are the right ones. Like when there's 5 or 6 different quizzing apps, for example.
Yes.
And there's 4 or 5 different presentation, interactive presentation apps. And there's, audio apps and there's video apps and
it's crazy.
There's tons of them. So I haven't made like a top 10 list. I don't know if that's what we were going to try to do.
Sure. We're just going to throw out some things, and then maybe we develop a top 10, kind of thing.
We should.
Yeah.
We should. We could make a blog post. Actually, Glenn.
Yeah.
That's what we should do.
Make the blog post. Top 10.
We should make a blog post. People love top 10 lists.
Let's do it. And then it'll be controversial because we'll exclude somebody and then they'll be like really mad at us.
Then we'll get into fights on the internet, which is like my favorite thing.
Yeah. I figured you'd be up for that.
All right. Cool. So you got a list here. Go through you wrote these down. So
yeah, these are some of the ones that I was just taking a note of when we were looking at Andy Leiser's Twitter post and just a bunch of people responding. So if I was going to go with top 10 formative assessment apps, like when a teacher comes in and they're like, I want to, what kind of app should I be using? Depending upon the situation, because some of these are situational. They're different than each other in a way. They're still formative assessment, but they're, some of them are games, and some of them are more, like you just said, a presentation tool. So I would start, on my list here, I'm just going to skip around here, but I would start probably with Nearpod. And Nearpod and Pear Deck seem to do similar things, but in different ways, right? So I'm a big proponent of Nearpod just because there's still a lot of direct instruction that happens in classrooms today. So that thought of having a student-centered classroom where it's really a lot of it is driven from the student side, I think we're still a ways away from that happening, for the majority of classrooms. So there's still a lot of direct instruction. So the best direct instruction tool to go ahead and use, I believe, is Nearpod as far as getting students engaged and making sure that you know where they're at as far as in their knowledge, because you can do it not just with multiple choice and open-ended questions, but also with drawing tools and some of those types of things. So really have a wide variety of things to do there. So which one would you go with, Mike?
So I like this whole ecosystem of quizzing apps, like GimKit is on our list here.
Yes.
I like it because it uses this currency system that they have, right?
For sure. Yeah. Money.
Aren't they the ones that have the money or whatever?
Love it.
Which is kind of neat. I think that's cool. I love quizzing apps. I think anything that it has like a gamification type element to it is a blast. The kids love, the students that I had were pretty competitive as well. So they enjoyed anything where they felt like they were almost like in a bit of a competitive environment.
Yes.
So if that's not every classroom is like that. Not every classroom is the same, obviously.
Yep.
Some classes, some students don't, get going, by seeing their name, in a leaderboard and stuff like that. But, my students certainly did. So
yeah,
anything like that is pretty fun.
I would agree with you. And I always tell people, if you're going to use those as review apps, any kind of gaming apps, then use a variety of them, mix them up. So don't always use Kahoot, for example, or Quizlet Live or Quizzes. Right. There's a bunch of them. There's enough of them that you can vary them, that they're always novel. So it doesn't feel like, in every class you're doing a Kahoot, for example. Because I've heard that actually from students, that they're like, it just gets old after a while. You're just doing it in every class. It's lost its luster, and you want to make sure, of course, like you just said, that not all of your students are competitive. So you want to make sure you have a variety of different tools that you're going to use for them. But yeah, we have all kinds of tools here. We have Poll Everywhere. Have you ever used this thing called Plickers?
So there's about 4 or 5 of them on here that I've never used. Plickers
is an interesting
I've never
one.
used. Poll Everywhere I've never used. Mentimeter.
Yeah, Mentimeter. Yep.
I've never used that.
Okay.
What is Jamboard?
And Jamboard, was one of the ones that several people were talking about, and they needed a specific tool to be able to then use it, So we should investigate that one further. If you guys know something about Jamboard, tell us, and if it's being effective in your class, because I never heard of that. So I wanted to make sure I added it to our list here and say, hey, how do you guys use this right now?
Oh, it's like a Google thing.
Is it? Very cool.
It's a device.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what someone said. Do you need to purchase the device in order for us to be able to do this? And so then I was like, oh, okay. But the Plickers one, I don't know if you have if the teacher has an iPad, for example, but the students don't have one-to-one devices, or the teacher has a phone even. The reason why Plickers is so is really well received is the students don't need the one-to-one device. It's pretty interesting, huh? So up on the board, the teacher puts up some questions or whatever it might be, and the students raise up kind of what ends up being similar to a QR code for the response mic. Have you seen this before?
I've seen this.
And then it gathers all the data with the phone, with the camera app, Yeah. And then it knows like kind of where the students, where are they at with this. So it gathers the data very quickly and says, hey, the majority of you chose A, for example, but really the answer is C, and here's why. We can go ahead and have a discussion. So it's a real way of kind of going around not having a one-to-one device. So Plickers. Yes.
I've never used this, but I've never used this as the teacher, but I've participated in it being used.
Yes.
And it's pretty brilliant.
Yes, it is.
Let me tell you. And the speed in which it picks up the data is what I found was impressive. Like it scans, you move your iPad around and it's looking for a specific image.
Yes.
And depending on your answer, you'll have a different image on a piece of paper that you just hold up in the air. And the one iPad that the person who's running it waves it kind of around and it picks up whatever image and then it sorts them based on the image that you were holding up. And it's quite astounding how quickly it picks up the results. But it's cool because you could use this constantly with the same cards and just give, maybe even at the start of the year, give each student a set of 4 cards
laminated
that could
cards.
be laminated, right?
Exactly.
Put a little binder loop or whatever in them to keep them all together. They keep them in their desks, and then you set up the questions whenever you want for whatever you want.
And then boom.
And then you just say, okay, let's see where everyone's at. We're going to do this. And you get instant information. The kids you wouldn't have to hand these sets of tags out. You can just keep them in your desk. Students keep them in their desk if they can keep them kind of organized. Like I said, in maybe a binder, I'm talking about a binder loop.
Gotcha.
Hole punch each one of them, put them all together.
Pull them out,
keep them
answer
in
some questions. Yep. Love it.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah,
that would be super quick. You won't need devices necessarily. And you can still get that fun. It's fun. I thought it was really neat when I was doing it. I thought it was pretty entertaining to do. And you're still giving the instructor a good amount of information.
Absolutely.
So I like that one. Jamboard is a lot like Microsoft has a competing product, a big Surface screen, basically. So they're selling it to schools, I guess, but probably mostly also to businesses as a collaborative whiteboard, basically.
Oh, cool.
For more businesses. It's super, nice looking and high tech and whatnot. So that's what a Jamboard is. Obviously, Flipgrid came up on this list. I had never seen. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, I don't know how much more we need to say about Flipgrid at this point. Slack on this list was interesting. I've never seen Slack used as I
thought it was interesting too.
School tool.
Yeah, I would want to know more about how schools are using it, because I would say, isn't Slack more of a collaborative organizational tool? Do you know what I mean? Like a project organization, discussions,
email replacement. For
exactly, on a specific topic to make sure that you're fulfilling whatever it is that you're working on. It was interesting. I would want to know more about how they're using it as a formative assessment tool.
Right. So lots of interesting apps here, and some really, really cool stuff. We'll post there's a big list. We got kind of the idea from a list that showed up on the NWEA website. So we'll post that article, and you can hopefully take a look at it, and maybe you'll see something that you haven't used before,
That'd be awesome.
Which is fun. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the awesome Monica Burns. So stay with us.
OnEducation is brought to you by Audible.
So I got to tell you about this book. So I'm reading a book called You Can't Spell America Without Me. It's written by Alec Baldwin. And it's in Trump's vernacular. Like, it's in his voice. Like, it's written, it's like as if it was written by Donald Trump.
Okay.
And so I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, every time I'm reading it, I'm hearing Donald Trump's voice reading it to me. So I looked up on Audible if it was there, and I'm telling you, it's there.
Oh,
so
my
this
goodness.
is Alec Baldwin in the voice of Donald Trump reading the book You Can't Spell America Without Me. You've got to listen to this. It is an absolute nightmare of a book. It's hysterical. So all that you guys have to do to listen to You Can't Spell America Without Me is go to audibletrial.com/oneducation. That's audibletrial.com/oneducation. And you will get a free audiobook download, which you should totally use for You Can't Spell America Without Me by Alec Baldwin, read to you by Alec Baldwin in the voice of Donald Trump. There's nothing better. So go do that, like, right now. All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We are thrilled to be joined today by Monica Burns, who's going to be speaking at FETC this coming winter. And also, we just found out or just realized she's going to be at TIES as well. Welcome to the podcast, Monica.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
So before we get going, maybe you can give us a little bit of the Monica Burns 101. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from and your background? Give us a sense of how you got to where you are now and what you're doing.
So I am a former New York City public school teacher. So I taught in a classroom where we started off with overhead projectors, but by the time that I left, we had 2 years one-to-one iPad. And so that's really when I started speaking and sharing and blogging about the work that was happening in my classroom. And when I left the classroom, I continued doing the writing and the blogging piece, but then also traveling and working with schools in different spaces who are really looking to be more thoughtful with their technology integration, as well as writing and publishing several books on education technology.
So Monica, you co-wrote a book with Ben Ford. I think it just came out, and it's about an edtech tool called Adobe Spark. And the title of the book is 40 Ways to Inject Creativity into Your Classroom with Adobe Spark. So what makes Spark a go-to edtech tool for student creation?
So our book came out just a few weeks ago through EdTech Team Press, and we really are excited about Adobe Spark from the creation side of things. I came across it when I was searching for open-ended creation tools in the classroom that were free, that would work on Chromebooks and iPads and whatever anyone got. And so I connected with the folks at Adobe and with Ben Forda and started sharing their tool more thoughtfully. And that's when we had the idea for some really concrete activities, lesson ideas, ways that teachers could use Adobe Spark in the classroom. And that's how the book came about.
That's awesome. So I'm really interested in discussing a session you're doing at FETC, and it's called School Branding and Storytelling, again with Adobe Spark. And in the description of the session, you say, how is your school and classroom viewed by the outside world? And Mike and I talk about this type of thing all the time. So why do you think it's so important for teachers and admin to be aware of how they are viewed outside of the school? And can you give us some advice on how to best leverage, for example, the power of creation tools like Adobe Spark in social channels to celebrate teaching and learning at schools?
So this is a topic that I'm really excited about because I spend a lot of time thinking about students as creators in the classroom, which is how I got connected and really dove into the Adobe Spark tools. But anyone can use them to tell a story. And that's where the school storytelling comes in. So I've had the chance to work with some school leaders, chat with school leaders, and brainstorm with them different ways to share their school stories. And I really think it's so important that everyone tells the great work that's already happening in their building. So it's not about creating new moments or anything like that. It's really about saying, what is everyone already doing? How can we snap pictures, create a video, put together a quick website, and do all of the things that can help other people understand all of the wonderful things happening in a school, in a district, and share that locally, right? So with people who are nearby in a classroom, or more globally, if they want to share their story with the world.
Absolutely.
Nice. So in the previous segment of this episode, we were discussing our go-to formative assessment tools. And at FETC, you discussed that exact topic in a session called Make It Count, 15 formative assessment favorites for K-12 classrooms. Can you share with our audience what are your top 3 formative assessment tools?
Wow, that's a good question. And I'm sure it's always tough, right? When you have a listicle of favorites to pick just a couple. I would say one of my go-tos that I use all the time, especially when I'm demoing in classrooms. So a lot of times when I'm visiting schools, it's not just me kind of popping in for one day and then leaving, although sometimes that's part of it. More often than not, and one of my favorites, I'm with schools in more of a side-by-side coaching role. So one that I use a lot when I'm in classrooms is Nearpod. I've used it with pre-K students as all the way up to adult learners, and it's great because you have that embedded real-time formative assessment, whether it's a quick sketch or drawing or a quick question that someone has responded to. So I would say Nearpod's definitely near the top of my list when it comes to formative assessment, because you can get a wide range of information in lots of different ways. So there's that differentiated piece kind of built into the formative assessment data collection as well. I would also, I don't think I can, do a list, even a top 3 without mentioning Google tools. So maybe this is a wider.
You can go to top 5.
Right. So, as much as I love something like Google Forms, right, which is great for making customizable data entry forms and gathering information, I really think that the real-time, concrete, right, relevant, actionable commenting that you can do within the Google Docs or Google Slides or even Sheets, if that's a space that you're in with your kids, that is really where the magic happens when we think about leveraging the power of digital tools. So someone can get information and actually use it, right? So when we think about formative assessment data, it really should be actionable. So if we can go in, we can see something, we can leave a comment and response. Not only are we on a fact-finding mode as an educator, but then we're giving a student something that they can work with, right? So that's definitely up there too. So Nearpod, and then the commenting within the Google ecosystem, and then the forms collection, that might round out my top 3.
Cool. Yeah, we it's funny. We had a debate about, what was it, Glenn? Maybe about 4 or 5 episodes ago about kind of tech tools and apps, and one of the things that came up when we were debating was how powerful the commenting and thought system is for Google Docs and stuff like that, how you can collaborate and how teachers can just edit things on the spot or provide insight or feedback on the spot. It makes it a game changer when it comes to doing work that we've been doing forever. It is quite a valuable tool, I guess.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And it's something too, where when we talk about, how many Chromebooks does your school have? How many iPads does your school, like that's great that you have access to technology, but then it's the, how are you using it? Right. So those use cases that you just shared are really important for us to think about, right, when talking about how powerful technology is once you have it.
Hey, Monica, we don't have this on our questions, but I was going to ask you this. Is there a ed tech tool? Mike and I are always looking out for the newest, latest, and greatest that people maybe aren't using fully right now. Because we talk about Nearpod and Google Forms, Google Suite in general. But is there anything out there where you're like, people, you should really check this out, and this is something that would be powerful?
So I have one for you guys specifically, I guess, because we're thinking about podcasting today, right? Synth, I should say. I want to say their website's Go Synth, or on social they're Go Synth. So sometimes I'm putting them together, but Synth, like a synthesizer, SYNTH, is a tool that I've come across recently. They reached out to me. They gave me a nice demo of their tool, and so they're looking at like bite-sized or really short recordings. And so that's one that I'm just really pumped about. And I think that from a formative assessment piece, being able to take more of an audio spin, like I love Flipgrid. I think it's really powerful, but it's always interesting for me to see, who's comfortable with video and who's not comfortable. And I don't even mean adults, right? I think at first I was surprised. I was like, don't you want to, show your, don't you want to do a video? Aren't you excited about this?
Some kids just don't.
But, right. Not everyone's comfortable. And I think it's really important to be, respectful of that. When I, just recently, or I shouldn't say too recently, but maybe in this past spring, I was working with students who were recording their voice within Book Reader to make some interactive books. And I thought that was going to be really exciting for them, right? But everyone's comfort level of, I don't know how my voice sounds, or, I don't know, right? But or Synth is one that I think is going to be a really interesting one to watch in the formative assessment space.
Didn't we talk about that? Didn't we talk about that a few months ago, Glen?
Yes, because it was a former company. I believe it was, I can't remember who they were before.
They were Recap.
Yes, exactly.
So I had been familiar with them for a while. I thought Recap was really great, but then Flipgrid was doing something that kind of fell, I think, in that space. So when they, were, I guess, looking for their next steps, I don't know too much about that, origin story. But yeah, they're connected with those folks.
That's awesome.
It's funny. They actually said as much too they referenced Flipgrid, I think, in that email that they sent out to everybody that they were, changing things up. They were doing a pivot that, Flipgrid basically, cut their lawn, so to speak, and whatnot. But the new tool sounds really, really cool. It's amazing how many tools are out there. I actually just discovered Pear Deck like 3 months ago for some reason, and I love that thing. I love Pear Deck, and I'm working on a whole bunch of slide decks for a bunch of different stuff, and I plan on using Pear Deck, and Glen actually loves using Nearpod.
Yes,
quite a bit.
My favorite tool.
There are so many awesome tools out there, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've been in this kind of blogging and sharing tool space, right, for a while, and so I'm always interested to see like what kind of trends are there, right? When it's something like Pear Deck or Nearpod, or if it's something like that Flipgrid, like Recap type of thing, like, can there be a bunch of tools that do something pretty similar, right? Where do you have that saturation level too? And then it's always neat to see like the breakdown to say, this is the one little way it's different. And that's going to be a game changer for one person when another person might not really care too much about that one little feature.
Right on. So one last, I guess, very important question. Glen and I were talking about Christmas earlier in the podcast, and my Christmas tree went up today. So I guess we want to know, do you have any Christmas traditions, big plans? Do you have a tree in your home? And when does it go up, or is it up already? Do you want to weigh in on this for us, Monica?
So my tree is up. Mine went up after Thanksgiving. So I did a trip down to visit family. And when I came back, I put it up that weekend. My tree is a fake tree. I live in Jersey City. So I'm in a city, and it is a gold tree, a tinselly
gold tree. I want to see a picture of that.
I'll make sure to put one up on Instagram this week. I'm still in the ornament mode where I bought new ornaments, but need some hooks for those extra ornaments, those things you don't think of when you get excited at Target. So that tree is up. It is a skinny, tall tree because I'm in a small square footage situation right now. But yeah, it was my kind of, I think I need that a few years ago.
Nice.
That is so cool.
So there you have it. Monica's weighed in. The tree is up. Do you have thoughts on how early a tree should go up?
I have
or late. When is there a too early
So a couple things here. My rule is after Thanksgiving. Absolutely. I saw a couple people get excited on my social media, people I follow who already had their tree up before Thanksgiving. Not for me. But one of my favorite things, and I know some people who do this as a real family tradition, I've done it before in the past, but it's not like an ingrained family tradition, is lighting their Christmas tree at the same time as the Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. So lighting it up the first time. And so that's one of those things that every year I say, you know what, I should wait, but then sometimes you just can't help yourself.
That's
so
awesome.
Cool. Yes.
Very cool. So thanks for being on the show, Monica. We'll see you at, Glen will see you at TIES. I won't be there.
Yes.
And I'll see you and Glen will see you at FETC in January. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to seeing you both.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Mike Washburn and my co-host is Glen Irvin. Do you want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Glen is at Irv Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. Our engineers are Jake and Justin at Podcast Production Team. Check out their website at podcastproductionteam.com. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we'd be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost, and this helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome. See you soon.